Part 12. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 111. Binghua watched Angel Ran leave the laboratory and sighed silently in her heart. The Sky Sword Legion was composed entirely of young women. Female angels are inherently emotional creatures. Their thoughts are not influenced by interests, but they have sympathy for the weak and so-called kindness. Of course Binghua herself has it, but she is more rational, otherwise she would not send troops to curb the expansion of the Cyclops civilization in the Mir galaxy. Binghua's plan is to wait until he is promoted to the third-generation super soldier, then directly annihilate the Cyclops king, and then use the remaining Cyclops civilization as the whetstone for the Sky Sword Legion. Angel Ran's dispatching work went very smoothly. He completed the tasks assigned by Binghua that day, and led 100,000 soldiers of the Heavenly Sword Legion to the area where the Cyclops civilization was severely ravaged, and formed a simple defense line to prevent the Cyclops civilization from continuing on a large scale. Invade other star systems. On the way, Angel Ran also saved the cold weapon civilization or pre-nuclear civilization that could not be reached. The angel's beautiful figure and heroic fighting style soon caused the rescued civilizations to change their belief in the former male angels. Appearance is justice. They respected the angel warriors as gods in the sky, and some civilizations even held human sacrifices that were foolish in the eyes of the angels, but they were stopped by the angels' order. In the end, it was really impossible to defeat those civilizations that treated angels as gods. Angel Ran had no choice but to give an order, asking the angels under his command to rescue those civilizations and tell the leaders of those civilizations that if they believed in angels, they only need to offer some insignificant tributes immediately. Angel Ran was occupying a high position in the conference hall of the Skyblade battleship, and below him stood more than 20 guardian angels responsible for commanding each angel team. Report, Order Relay Officer. My team has completed the rescue mission, now requesting the next mission location. A female angel, half of her face covered by a mask, put her right hand on her chest and saluted while asking. Angel Ran nodded. Angel Yi, there are no civilizations that need help for the time being. You go back and be on standby. I will call you if there is a combat mission. The female angel named Angel Yi was a little disappointed when she heard this. She bowed her head in response and prepared to exit. But suddenly a burst of footsteps came outside the conference hall, and more than 20 guardian angels standing in the hall turned their heads to look curiously. In the corridor outside the conference hall, a large group of guardian angels were walking towards Binghua, and the footsteps of multiple metal boots on the ground were crisp. Legion Commander. Legion Commander. The female angel who was in charge of guarding along the way saluted and addressed her respectfully. Binghua raised her hand to indicate that there was no need to be polite. Legion Commander. When did you arrive? Why didn't I receive the message? Angel Ran stood up from the throne in surprise, then walked down the platform to face Binghua. Binghua raised his hand to say hello and said with a smile. Isn't this a surprise for you? Why don't you welcome me? Faced with Binghua's joke, Angel Ran shook his head repeatedly, indicating that he definitely didn't mean it. Okay. I was just joking, don't take it seriously. Binghua patted Ran on the shoulder and crossed her side, walked up to the high platform and sat on the throne where Angel Ran had been sitting before. The hundreds of guarding angels brought by Binghua were all divided into two columns and stood upright below, looking at Binghua's direction together. After the arrival of Binghua and the guardian angel, the popularity of the originally deserted hall instantly increased by several levels. Binghua leaned back and leaned against the throne, placing his hands casually on the armrests of the throne, and asked the former commander Angel Ran. Ran, tell me the current situation briefly. I just need to know where the Cyclops King is now. Angel Ran nodded to indicate that he understood, and after a moment of organizing his words, he finally spoke. Legion Commander, now the Cyclops civilization has been blocked by our front to the east of the Ceylon star system. At the same time, the Cyclops King is gathering his troops in the Paris star system that is separated from us. According to my speculation, it is because he wants to make a breakthrough. The defense line we set up. Binghua nodded to indicate that she understood. It seems that their ambitions are not small, but unfortunately they encountered our Heavenly Sword Legion, and they can only stop here. Ran, give the order immediately, shrink the defense line, gather the scattered angel teams, and we will directly attack the Paris star system. Angel Ran quickly shouted yes to express acceptance of the order. After some small talk, the guardian angels in the conference hall began to disperse, resting and preparing for war. Angel Ran followed Binghua and asked Binghua in front of him a little worriedly. Sister Binghua, if we just attack the Cyclops civilization directly like this, isn't it a bit too underestimated? Underestimating the enemy does not exist, Ran. I have carefully studied the combat video you uploaded before coming here. There is no doubt that the Cyclops civilization was once a powerful existence, but now they are short of resources and cannot compete with our Heavenly Sword Legion. Not to mention the equipment gap between us, even the high-end combat power is our advantage. Under such circumstances, we don't need any strategy at all, we just need to drive the Skyblade to defeat them. Ran, remember that sometimes being too cautious is not entirely a good thing. And I'd love to know how strong I am today. Angel Ran looked at the back figure in front of her. When Binghua confidently said, I want to know how strong I am now, she felt inexplicably that Binghua's back became extremely tall and radiant. It's like there is a new scorching sun at the end of the corridor. The endless light emitted shone on Binghua, and he seemed to be unintentionally protected by Binghua. Angel Ran's original worried mood was swept away, and a sense of self-confidence emerged in his heart. There was an idea that as long as Binghua was still there, the Heavenly Sword Legion would always walk with victory. The two Skyblade warships, plus the original 100,000 Sky Sword Legion and the 120,000 Mixed Legion brought by Binghua, a total of 220,000 angels marched directly to the Paris star system. There is a reason why there are so many extra troops. As Binghua leads the Sky Sword Legion to frequent victories in the Mir Galaxy, Binghua's reputation has also increased. In the area under the rule of the Heavenly Sword Legion, the status of female angels has been greatly improved, changing the previous low status when male angels were in power. However, this improvement is also limited. It only ensures that they will not be bullied by male angels and have equal status. The Heavenly Sword Legion led by Binghua has not yet been able to rule in a way that bullies male angels. At most, when there are disputes between male and female angels, they will only favor female angels. However, there is a way for those female angels who have been bullied by male angels in the past to get revenge, and that is to become soldiers of the Heavenly Sword Legion. After becoming a warrior of the Heavenly Sword Legion and completing the Legion's combat training, if the female angels seek revenge on the male angels who once bullied them, their fellow law enforcement warriors will only turn a blind eye. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 112. This kind of unspoken rule-like privilege is the reason why the Heavenly Sword Legion has grown rapidly. Binghua also knows about this kind of thing, but he allows it to exist. Because the existence of this kind of unspoken rule is of great benefit to the development of the Sky Sword Legion, this can be seen from the fact that the Sky Sword Legion now has as many as 100,000 recruits in reserve. According to Binghua's estimation, the Mir Galaxy can probably bring more than 300,000 additional troops to the Sky Sword Legion, and now half of this goal has been achieved. I believe that in a short time, the Heavenly Sword Legion will be able to surpass the Tianji Legion, which is silently farming and developing, and the Apocalypse Legion, which has been fighting guerrillas everywhere. As for Kesha's Skyblade Legion, Binghua said that it would be difficult to catch up because the apparent regular troops of the Skyblade Legion already exceed 500,000. Moreover, Kesha has recently begun to divide the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Tianblade legions under her command. This made Binghua secretly complain. It was really irritating that people were more powerful than people. He was still happy that the total number of legions exceeded 300,000, but others were worrying about the establishment of a legion and how many soldiers should be reduced. When Fang Binghua led the 2 heavenly blade warships of the Heavenly Sword Legion to the Para Star, countless dark fleets had already completed their formation. The dense artillery fire was unable to break through the shield of the Sky Blade battleship, but was defeated by the 2 Sky Blades. Binghua was not even interested in commanding such a crushing battle situation, so he directly let the 2 Sky Blades withstand the enemy's artillery bombardment and rush into the battleship group of the Cyclops civilization. As the ultimate war fortress, the Sky Blade battleship showed these Cyclops, who had not had a conflict with the main army of the Angel civilization for hundreds of years, what crushing level firepower coverage meant. The Skyblade battleship floats alone in the enemy fleet group, surrounded by countless conical black battleships decorated with blade spikes on their armor. The next second the Skyblade battleship entered attack mode, the large shield changed into a small one, controlled by the automatic calculation real-time defense system in each area. Then countless dark energy rail guns fired at the same time, and thousands of rays like light spears covered the surrounding area. In an instant, several kilometers around the Skyblade turned into a sea of fire. Under a salvo of Skyblade, the Cyclops civilization directly wiped out hundreds of small and medium-sized warships. Seeing that their side had suffered such heavy losses, the generals on the side of the Cyclops civilization were furious and ordered to fight back at all costs. The battleships of the Cyclops civilization, which were originally shocked by the firepower of the Skyblade, immediately roared back inside the battleships after receiving the order. Black energy rays flew towards the Skyblade. When they were still hundreds of meters away from the white ship hull, a small orange block energy shield appeared to block the attack. Then several energy rail guns immediately turned their muzzles and fired back. A 100-meter-long black warship flexibly evaded on the battlefield with snake maneuvers. Under the command of the captain, it had already dodged several rays that were like light spears. At the same time, the secondary guns and main guns on the ship's hull were constantly tilting their firepower in the direction of the Skyblade, but they were all isolated by the calculated energy shield. Then the shield disappeared after resisting, and then more light spear-like rays than the previous rounds of attacks came. The captain tried very hard to order his crew to avoid it, but in the end an attack penetrated the ship's hull, affecting its sailing speed. The captain's face was filled with despair when he saw this, and then the entire bridge was engulfed in flames. The Skyblade's attacks and the calculated shield defense are all controlled by the supercomputer mounted on the Skyblade. Often, as long as the shield in an area is attacked, Skyblade will accurately calculate the attack trajectory, and then control the weapons on the Skyblade battleship to instantly counter-attack according to the original trajectory. Therefore, only dozens of angels are needed to control the fire strike of the entire Skyblade very easily. It is often only necessary to adjust the direction and strike density according to the order. In this battle, because of Binghua's perfunctory command, the angels responsible for the Skyblade attack module felt extremely relaxed. After a few hours passed, the outer space of Parastar and the outer atmosphere were covered with the wreckage of countless battleships, densely packed like a sea of metal garbage. Binghua and Angel Ran each sat on a Skyblade battleship and drove the main force of the Cyclops civilization directly into the atmosphere. On a wide plain, there are densely packed giants standing about 3 meters tall, wearing simple vest-style metal armor, revealing thick arms covered with a layer of gray-black cuticle skin, with only a red one-eyed giant on their face. The style is rough and brutal. Unlike the angels, some of these Cyclops held giant cold weapons, while others held large firearms with large calibers and rough styles. And above their heads there were countless suspended small aircraft and a prismatic celestial warship 10 kilometers in size. Opposite these savage-looking giants was a different scene. Two huge Skyblade battleships were suspended hundreds of meters above the ground, with their towering hulls reaching into the sky. With a spear in one hand and a shield in the other, the upper half of the face was covered by the visor pulled down by the helmet, and only the lower half of the female angels with cherry-colored lips were exposed. They incited their white wings to float high in the sky to form a layered defense. Formation. Like a sea of white clouds that are constantly floating, it looks holy, noble and full of aura. Of course, Cyclops cannot appreciate this kind of temperament. The Cyclops King, who is 3.5 meters tall and much taller than the surrounding Cyclops, holds a long-handled special weapon. Under the front end of this weapon is a small axe blade, with conical armor-piercing spikes on top, just like an alternative pickaxe. The king of the Cyclops civilization, his name is Sargeras. He wears a heavy armor with blade-like spikes on the knees, insteps of boots, shoulders, and arm guards. The only exposed biceps are like the scale-like cuticle skin faintly exudes a dull metallic sheen. Birds in the sky? Let your king come out and fight me. Sargeras hammered his chest with his fist, making a loud banging sound. He walked out of his army column alone, came to the open space and roared at the angels, shouting loudly as if he were on an ancient battlefield. As Sargeras called for battle, the ordinary Cyclops warriors also let out unknown shouts, as if they were infected by their king's bravery, and their morale, which was originally a bit low, suddenly improved. The angels in the sky looked at the shouting Cyclops king below. Although they were silent on the surface, they had some thoughts in their hearts. They were looking forward to seeing Legion Commander Binghua's fighting style. On the extended platform at the center of the Skyblade, Binghua stood and stared at the scene below, speaking with interest. I didn't expect the Cyclops King to stand up on his own, his head is really full of muscles. Ran, do you think I can kill him if I order Tianren to fire a main gun somewhere? Angel Ran, who was standing slightly behind Binghua on his left, gave his own idea after thinking about the feasibility of Binghua's words. Legion Commander, I think it should be impossible to eliminate the opponent. Ran, I was just saying casually. You are trying to be serious, but you are right. The Skyblade's main gun alone cannot kill the third-generation super soldier with one hit. Thanks to book friends for their support in the past 2 days, double updates will be resumed today. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 113. Binghua stepped forward and reached the edge of the platform, but Ran quickly stopped him. Legion Commander, where are you going? Binghua didn't stop, her white wings spread out behind her back, and she spoke without looking back. Ran, since the other king has asked me to duel him by name, it doesn't matter if I go and fight him. Just in time to test how much my strength has increased in all aspects after being promoted to the third-generation super soldier. Also, the command of the Legion will be left to you. If something unexpected happens later, you can use it freely. Binghua's words of confidence mixed with a hint of burning fighting spirit made Angel Ran's words of dissuasion unable to continue. In the end, facing such a willful Legion commander, Ran could only give up on himself and helplessly answer. I understand, Legion commander. Come out. Don't you dare to fight me. Ha ha ha, bird people, it seems that your king is very afraid of death and does not dare to appear in front of me. As he spoke, Sargeras moved in the direction of the female angel with a sarcastic tone and laughed contemptuously. Even the Cyclops army behind them burst into laughter, which made some of the female angel warriors in the air, who had just become warriors, secretly tighten their small hands holding their weapons, wishing they could just open their mouths and fight back. But at the next moment, there was only a rumble of thunder, and a thick bolt of lightning struck the ground more than 10 meters in front of the Cyclops King, turning the ground black. The sudden appearance of lightning also silenced Sargera's laughter, and his attention instantly focused on the place where the lightning appeared. The wings on Binghua's back flapped and slowly fell from the sky, with a confident face and a faint smile that made people feel close to each other. "King Cyclops, don't talk too much sometimes, otherwise it won't end well in a while." Binghua looked down at the Cyclops King below and his words were tepid. Sargeras snorted coldly, raised his head, raised his long-handled alien battle axe, pointed at Binghua and cursed. "Birdman, I thought you were going to hide in the battleship and dare not come out. Come down and fight with me." Binghua flapped her wings and floated in the air 7 or 8 meters above the ground. She had no intention of going down. She felt comfortable having the other person look up at her. "Oh, why should I listen to you and fight you? Why don't you just fly up and fight me?" Facing Binghua's teasing, Sargeras obviously didn't have the patience to continue communicating with words, so it responded with practical actions. "Birdman, you can only show off your majesty in the sky. If you have the ability, come down and duel with me." Sargeras roared angrily, and his strong body of more than 3 meters jumped into the air slightly higher than Binghua. He raised the long-handled battle axe above his head and slashed Huashan with a forceless blow. Binghua even carried the sword, flapped her wings in the air, and nimbly avoided Sargeras's jump attack. Binghua avoided the attack with the corners of her mouth raised slightly, stretched out her right hand and the flaming sword appeared with a sound, then flapped its wings behind its back and dived forward at high speed. Before Sargeras landed in the air, he felt the rushing wind coming from behind. He roared and twisted his waist in the air, charging up the long-handled battle axe in his hand and turning around. The axe blade and the sword blade collided fiercely in the air, and there was only a loud sound, and the harsh sound waves spread in the air like ripples on the water's surface. Binghua was shaken by the huge force and turned somersault in the air, while Sargeras fell into the ground below like a cannonball. Raising his right hand holding the hilt of the sword, Binghua showed a look of satisfaction on his face. He had just had a head-on confrontation with the third-generation Cyclops King, but he was only slightly numb from the shock. Sargeras, who fell into the ground below, pulled his upper body out of the soil with his hands on his hands, opened his mouth and spat out several mouthfuls of mud. What the hell? As soon as Sargeras stood up, a rumble of thunder sounded above his head, and the next moment, the thickness of his blazing blue arm flashed with lightning. The ground exploded, thunder exploded, and pieces of charred earth struck by lightning flew out in all directions, and Sargeras was among them. Binghua moved away and pointed downwards, with the flaming sword wrapped in dazzling lightning, and said sarcastically to Sargeras, who had just been struck by lightning. "What's wrong? Didn't you just say that I would only show off my power in the sky? What? Now you don't even have the strength to stand up." Sargeras stood up with an angry look on his face, gritted his teeth, and the scarlet single eye on his face seemed to be spilling blood at the next moment. Binghua's attack just now was too sudden. Although Sargeras was not hit from the front, he was also affected by lightning. The few extra scorched marks on the heavy armor on his chest were evidence of this. "Your attack is just for scratching the itch. Come again if you have the ability. Let's see if I don't chop it to pieces this time." Binghua narrowed his eyes slightly and said softly, "Really?" Binghua's body suddenly fell forward, a dazzling electric light flashed all over his body, and he swooped forward quickly, leaving circles of lightning rings behind him. Sargeras felt his eyes flash as the ice flower opened in front of him. He instinctively raised his weapon with his right hand and swung it out. Binghua spun his body in the air, almost avoiding the attack by the swinging axe blade, and then stabbed forward with the flaming sword. A sharp sound of metal collision was heard, like a heavy hammer striking a steel plate, and a vertical pupil-shaped gap was punched out of Sargeras' heavy armor. Sargeras leaned back slightly, then pressed forward fiercely, and at the same time raised his left arm to deliver a straight punch. Boom! A circle of turbulent air exploded, and the ground under Sargeras' feet was cracked. He was shocked and flew into the air. At the same time, the explosive power also caused the flaming sword to be erected in front of him to block. Binghua quickly moved backwards more than 10 meters. Slightly moving away from the flaming sword, which was emitting a faint trace of white steam, Binghua looked at Sargeras carefully with his dark eyes on the half of his face exposed. The pure power is slightly stronger than mine, but the speed is too slow. The armor should be composed of some special high-hardness metal. Judging from the degree of damage, it seems that it is too much to fatally damage it in a short time with the flaming sword alone. Difficulty. Several thoughts flashed through Binghua's mind in a moment, and he roughly summarized the information about Cyclops King Sargeras. Sargeras touched the gap pierced by the flaming sword on his chest armor, and his originally angry face began to calm down. The sight of Binghua and Sargeras fighting for a moment, and clearly gaining the upper hand, made the female angels above feel proud. They all thought to themselves, weren't they scolding quite wildly just now? Now that you've been slapped in the face, let's see if you still have the nerve to continue being arrogant. Seeing that their king was at a disadvantage, the Cyclops yelled to encourage Sargeras, and at the same time said all kinds of vulgar and obscene words in the Cyclops language. Although Binghua didn't understand it, he knew it was definitely not a good word. Second update, any recommendation votes are required, and I would like to ask for support. If you also like Super Seminary fan fiction, you can recommend it. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 114. Thinking of such ice blossoms, he suddenly raised the flaming sword, his whole body flashed with lightning, and then suddenly turned into a stream of blue light and rushed out. Seeing this, Sargeras moved his right leg back and lowered his center of gravity, assuming a posture conducive to defense, and then calculated the right moment and hit the weapon with his hand. When Binghua, who was rapidly approaching Sargeras, saw this, his electromagnetically accelerated body suddenly stopped, and he suddenly felt a violent pulling force all over his body. However, for the physical fitness of the third-generation angel, it was still within the endurance range, and then Binghua quickly leaned back just to avoid the axe blade coming towards him. What happened next is easy to understand. Binghua, who was leaning back, turned around in the air, and the flaming sword in his right hand spun half a circle, and swung it towards Sargeras like a shot put. The axe handle in his hand blocked the slashing blade. The huge force made the axe handle tremble continuously, as if it was trying to escape the shackles of Sargeras's big hands. Binghua missed the attack, and leaned back in the air again and quickly flew backwards, just in time to avoid the conical armor-piercing hammer swung from the other end of the battle axe in Sargeras' hand. However, it is obvious that Sargeras is not satisfied with just forcing Binghua back. Its tactical goal is to regain the previous position. Sargeras made a large, deep footprint on the ground with one kick. He rushed forward like a cannonball. At the same time, he swung out the long-handled axe in his hand, causing the churned air to tumble with an extremely frightening momentum. However, the real situation at the scene was a strange sight. Every time Sargeras charged forward a certain distance, Binghua flew backwards a certain distance. Sargeras roared and struck down with his axe, but what he struck was often just a ball of exploding lightning and after images. The real Binghua has dragged the jumping electric light around to the side of Sargeras, and the corners of his mouth are slightly raised, looking extremely leisurely, as if he is playing. Binghua's appearance was undoubtedly able to arouse the anger of others, and the same was true for Sargeras. The anger that had been suppressed began to burn violently again. As a result, Sargeras' attacks became more ferocious and violent, and the air was rippled by the wildly swinging axe. The moment the ice flower with dazzling electric light all over its body landed on the ground, its toes touched the ground. With the help of the floating wings and the electromagnetic acceleration of the first-generation thunder combat method, the whole person quickly floated backwards, leaving a blurry and elongated afterimage in its original place. The long-handled pickaxe in Sargeras's hand hit the ground heavily, and every inch of the ground within a radius of dozens of meters was cracked and raised like barbs. Before Sargeras could raise his axe again, Binghua turned back at a speed that was even faster than flying upside down. The sword blade filled with dark energy glowed with a blazing red light, and the flaming sword was driven by Binghua's right arm to slash out diagonally. Because the axe hit the ground too hard just now, Sargeras was still in a state of immobility with no new strength and had no time to block. The next moment, a heart-wrenching sound sounded. Binghua's dark eyes condensed, and he slashed out the flaming sword and cut through Sargeras's arm guard, but it got stuck in the arm he raised to block. In muscles. Before Binghua could withdraw the flaming sword, Sargeras gave up his weapon and roared angrily. His right fist had already struck. The heavy wind pressure caused by it blew the long black hair on the back of Binghua's head like a peacock. Spread out like a screen. The fists came more and more in Binghua's pupils. Binghua loosened his grip on the hilt of the sword, lowered his head and reached forward with his left arm. He raised his palm like a knife and struck Sargeras's thick arm in a lateral direction. Then, using Sargeras's arm as a fulcrum, Binghua turned back and kicked Sargeras's big head with a sharp whip kick. There was a muffled bang, and Sargeras just tilted his head and nothing happened. Seeing this, Binghua didn't even want the flaming sword, and quickly retreated to open the distance between him and Sargeras. Sargeras did not choose to pursue it. Rather, it was out of determination. It opened its mouth and spit, then pulled out the flaming sword stuck in the muscle of its left arm. After a few gestures, it felt that it was too small and threw it away. "Slippery, you'll be dead when I catch you." Binghua was not too frustrated. The reason why she fought in close combat with the huge Sargeras was to test her current speed and reflexes to see if she could keep up with the veteran third-generation warriors. In terms of the results, Binghua was very satisfied. Although her consciousness could barely keep up with the fighting rhythm of the third-generation warriors in the past, her body could not react at all. It's different now. Except for the sword that failed to break Sargeras's defense just now, Binghua has always been able to use his speed to play with Sargeras with ease. Seeing Binghua's weapon being taken away by his king outside the field, the Cyclops side burst into cheers, while the angels looked at Binghua with somewhat worried eyes. The battle speed between Binghua and Sargeras was so fast that they couldn't see who had the upper hand. However, now that the Legion commander's weapon was taken away by the other party, it was indeed visible to all evil. "The test is almost done. Let me use you to test my new weapon. I hope your big body can withstand its cutting." Binghua suddenly said this. She did not feel distressed about losing the flaming sword, but showed a look of expectation. Binghua's right hand was stretched out to the side, and a special-shaped sword with a length of more than 1.5 meters was protruded from the wormhole. It was made up of small ink-white parts in the middle of the red blade. Binghua pulled it out at once, glanced at the special sword in his hand with satisfaction, then looked at Sargeras and whispered softly, "I hope you enjoy the next encounter with it. Chaiwan. As your first appearance, use the Cyclops King to sacrifice the sword for you." After Binghua finished speaking, he stepped forward and rushed forward. At the same time, he held Qi Yuan's hand and waved it fiercely in front of him. The next moment, Qi Yuan's sword blade clicked. With a clicking sound, the combined sword blades separated and quickly stretched and became thinner. They were connected by a metal wire as thick as a finger in the middle. They spanned a distance of more than 10 meters and were like a whip whipping towards Sargeras's big one-eyed head. Sargeras was caught off guard and subconsciously raised his left arm to block the attack. Binghua secretly shook his head when he saw this. The red abyss sword in his hand was not just a whip but a whip sword. Its strongest feature was its continuous cutting. Chaiwan's sword, which was connected by metal wires, struck Sargeras's left arm, immediately pricking several bloody holes. Binghua held Qi Yuan's hand and pulled it back. At the same time, with a thought, Qi Yuan's sword began to retract quickly. The next moment, the Chiwen's sword, which was more than 10 meters long, quickly retracted in the direction of Binghua, and the blades of the sword quickly cut through Sarjara's arm. When Qi Yuan returned to his normal height of 1.6 meters in Binghua's hands, a thick forearm and his palm spun in the air and fell to the ground. The left forearm that Sargeras had just blocked was now missing a section, and a large pool of bright red spurted out from the wound, but the amount of bleeding from the wound quickly decreased in the next second. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 115. The Red Abyss Sword was made by Binghua based on the principle of the snake belly sword, a fantasy weapon in the image of his previous life. Its original name was Whip Sword, Snake Belly Sword, etc. Its characteristics are the retractable blade and the ability to hit the opponent like a whip, and it has powerful cutting power that a simple whip cannot have. Based on the principle of the snake belly sword, Binghua added some of the knowledge and techniques he had learned to create the Chiwen sword in his hand. The blade of this sword is composed of 150 triangular-shaped scale blades, and can extend up to 15 meters with the support of special metal wires. Moreover, each blade is equipped with a special strong magnetic field that repels and adsorbs each other, which can be quickly extended and recovered under Binghua's control. At the moment when Qi Yuan struck Sarjara's arm, Binghua cancelled the extension function of Qi Yuan's sword. The rapidly shortening blade mercilessly cut through Sarjara's blocking arm like a chainsaw, relying on its numerical advantage to cut through its hard cuticle skin and muscle defenses that could block the flaming sword, thereby cutting through the flaming sword. Its forearms were cut off at the base. After Chiwen returned to the form of a long sword in Binghua's hand, he was swung out again, and the sword blade turned into a long whip blade and slashed forward like lightning. Sargeras gritted his teeth and did not dare to stay where he was. He quickly raised the axe with his right hand and quickly jumped back to avoid it. Immediately afterwards, Qi Yuan struck the spot where it was standing, and the ground instantly cracked, creating a deep crack several meters long. When Binghua saw Sargeras retreating, he did not flap his wings, but instead rushed forward with one step. Binghua held Qi Yuan's wrist and shook it forward. Qi Yuan's sword trembled from the ground and rose into the air like a wave. After the strength was accumulated layer by layer, it finally condensed on the tip of the sword and was quickly drawn out. There was a huge explosion in the air, and Chiwen struck the pickaxe used by Sargeras to block, making a deafening metallic buzzing sound. Sargeras felt that the power from the whip sword was several times greater than the power from the ice flower flame sword before. It could no longer control its own weapon with one hand, and the axe flew out of its hand. Binghua raised the corners of his mouth excitedly, and pulled back the hand holding the sword hilt. Chiwen's long sword reassembled itself in more than a second. Then Binghua held Qi Yuan upwards, and the sword lengthened again, spanning a distance of 7 or 8 meters, and struck Sargeras' huge chin. The tall body, which was more than 3 meters high, was whipped out. Sargeras covered his bleeding chin with one hand and fell to the ground with a bang. Binghua flapped her wings and floated into the air, like a cheetah hunting prey. She raised Chiwen and prepared to swing out again to deliver a fatal blow. But at this moment, several black aircraft swooped down from the sky, and a dense burst of light bombs shot toward Binghua. At the same time, dozens of Cyclops soldiers rushed out from the ground, ran to Sargeras, picked it up and ran towards their own troops. Sargeras didn't resist. It was a little scared after being beaten by Binghua. It had forgotten all its pride and everything. Now it just wanted to save its own life, just like that time 1,000 years ago. Things developed too fast. From the perspective of the Cyclops, it was obvious that their king had the upper hand, but who knew that the situation would reverse at the next moment? The angel king opposite just changed his weapon, and then cut off one of the king's arms. Then the king was hit in the chin. If it weren't for the Cyclops family's special super gene and strong defense, his head would probably have been like this by now. It was like a watermelon being cut in half. When Binghua saw someone interfering with her pursuit, she became angry and her face turned as cold as ice. When she saw the surge of electric light on her body, she retreated more than 10 meters, avoiding the attacks of those aircraft. Seeing Binghua retreating, those aircraft came closer, as if they wanted to make another move. Binghua didn't talk nonsense, a cold look flashed in his eyes. Chaiwen swung the sword in his hand, and saw a flash of red light in the air. A triangular aircraft several meters long split into two halves, and there was still smoke at the break. High temperature red light. Then Binghua waved his right arm a few more times, and Chaiwen's sword turned into a burst of slender red light that flashed staggered, directly smashing the remaining two aircraft into a pile of parts. As for the Cyclops pilot inside, has long been broken into countless pieces. This sudden change also made the angels react. A dense small orange light shot out from the direction of the Skyblade, passing over Binghua's head and sending a wave of skyfall to the Cyclops army on the ground in front of them. Baptism. Binghua raised his left arm to cover his eyes to resist the blowing earth and rocks. Dense fire clouds rose from below, and the ground was filled with craters. Among them were some broken limbs of Cyclops, but most of the Cyclops were survived. After all, the super soldier's physical fitness is very strong. As long as he is not unlucky enough to be hit head-on by the gunfire of a battleship, he will only suffer minor injuries. Then the Cyclops civilization fleet parked at high altitude rushed towards the Skyblade, with all their firepower coming at the same time. The two huge Heavenly Blade battleships showed no sign of weakness, and endless spears of orange-red light spilled out as if they were free, temporarily stopping their fire coverage on the ground. Half of the many angel warriors originally suspended in the sky separated and swooped down towards the Cyclops with spears and shields in hand. The remaining half evaded the enemy warship's gunfire and rushed towards the incoming jet-black warship group. Binghua's eyes below were always fixed on Sargera's position. After the fire coverage of the Skyblade stopped, the skilled man boldly rushed into the dense army of one-eyed soldiers alone. "Stop that bird, man! Cover King Sargera's retreat!" A Cyclops who looked like a low-level commander ordered in Cyclops language. After hearing the order, the ordinary Cyclops warriors roared and rushed towards Binghua with battle axes in hand, while those holding heavy firearms turned their guns around. "Get out of the way!" Binghua was in a bad mood at the moment. It was better to say that everyone would be like this. He could kill the Cyclops king on the spot, but he didn't expect that he would be destroyed by a group of minions in the end. Qi Yuan swung the sword horizontally in his hand and extended it to the maximum distance. The nearly 180-degree fan-shaped area within a dozen meters in front of Binghua and all the objects 1 meter and 3 meters above the ground were split into two. The Cyclops who originally charged towards Binghua with their weapons and shouting loudly were cut in half by Chaiwen's sword, and their high-pitched shouts turned into pitiful wails. Binghua's expression did not change at all. She was not a rookie on the battlefield, and this bloody scene could not scare her. Binghua did not choose to pursue from the air, because there were many soldiers with firearms among the Cyclops, and if he flew into the air alone, he would be a living target. Although small energy weapons cannot cause damage to the bodies of the third-generation super warriors, they can effectively limit Binghua's forward speed. So Binghua chose to break through from the ground, relying on the physical fitness of the third-generation super warrior and the sharpness of the red abyss sword in her hand, and she was like no one among the Cyclops. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival everyone. I originally wanted to update during the day, but I forgot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 116. Binghua quickly waved the red abyss sword in his hand, and the red light and shadow representing death kept flashing within a radius of more than 10 meters. At the same time, Binghua also carried a silver Han sword with his left hand, easily blocking high-speed bullets fired from all directions. Gradually, the charging speed of the originally fearless Cyclops slowed down, and finally stopped at a distance of more than 10 meters from Binghua. Because in just 2 minutes, more than 200 Cyclops soldiers were brutally cut into pieces by Binghua. The ground was full of bodies cut into upper and lower parts. The strong vitality kept some Cyclops from dying, crawling and groaning on the ground in pain. In the air more than half a meter above them, Binghua was flapping his wings, holding the Chiwen sword that was still dripping blood in his hand, and looking down at the surrounding Cyclops who dared not step forward with a dignified attitude. "If you are afraid, don't stand in front of me, otherwise you will only get the same fate as them." This naturally refers to the hundreds of Cyclops lying lifeless and dead on the ground. When Binghua saw that the Cyclops was cowering but not retreating, he bit his lower lip. He raised his body a certain distance, looked through the dense crowd of people, and looked thousands of meters away. He was being supported by his men and running towards a hovering spacecraft. Sargeras rushed away. "Don't think you can escape so easily." Qi Yuan quickly retracted Binghua's hand and returned to its normal longsword appearance. The next moment, in the shocked eyes of the surrounding Cyclops, Binghua's dazzling lightning began to flash. Boom! It seemed that the lightning drive, due to the significant increase in Binghua's computing power, began to affect the resonance of the surrounding air, and a dull and ear-splitting thunder was emitted from the wisps of arcs. Binghua's entire body seemed to be bathed in lightning, like a dazzling little blue sundae. However, this was already the limit. As he continued to improve, Binghua's own body would be unable to withstand the power of lightning and be damaged. Binghua let out a shout and leaned forward. The next moment, an afterimage flashing with bright lightning rushed out, dragging a long blue tail behind him. All the Cyclops blocking its front were ejected by the repulsive reaction caused by Binghua's violently shining blue lightning. Binghua was like a sharp sword piercing into tofu, piercing through the defense line formed by the Cyclops and crossing a distance of several thousand meters before stopping. The stopped Binghua was covered in light white smoke, her long black hair was hanging loosely on her back, and the edges of her armor, which was much more gorgeous than ordinary angels, were even a little red. At the same time, in the air around Binghua, arcs of electricity appeared from time to time, bursting out with dazzling light. This is the ultimate application of the first-generation thunder tactics. The electromagnetic ejection acceleration is operated at full power, and it can burst into unparalleled speed for long-distance sprints. However, the disadvantage is also obvious that it takes a long time to charge and cannot change direction. Below Sargeras, there were more than a dozen soldiers who looked stronger than ordinary Cyclops. After seeing Binghua appear, their expressions became shocked and nervous. Binghua's breathing was a little rapid, but he still spoke downwards. "King Cyclops, if you want to leave this planet, you can leave your life. I can ask your subordinates to leave with your body. Birdman, don't bully others too much. Our Cyclops civilization is not a weakling. I was just careless and misled you for a moment. When I am healed, we will have a duel." Sargeras, who had lost his hand, raised his head and looked up at the ice flower in mid-air. He clenched his right fist in anger, but he could only say harsh words. Although it was only a broken hand, the impact on Sargeras's combat effectiveness was huge. Not to mention that he was in a hurry when he was rescued by his men and even lost his weapon. You must know that it was a weapon made of pure red gold. It was almost indestructible. Do you think I'm a fool? And you invaded the Mir galaxy. Many civilizations have been destroyed by your hands. Do you think I, as the new owner of the Mir galaxy, will let you go? Or are you too naive? Faced with Binghua's words, Sargeras' face turned black, but he could not refute it. He was just looking for a way out for himself. "If you want the king's life, you must step over our corpses." A dozen guarding Cyclops were holding battle axes or spears and shields to protect Sargeras behind them. Binghua raised his eyebrows and did not choose to rush down. Instead, he opened a wormhole above his head with a thought. Then I will step over your corpses and get your king's head. The next moment, more than 30 silver Han swords shot out from the wormhole, making an ear-splitting scream in the air, dragging long silver after images towards the group of Cyclops below. The next moment, there was a booming explosion, and the soil was thrown high into the sky by the huge kinetic energy, and the booming explosions were connected together. The micro-wormhole above Binghua's head continuously ejected Han swords one after another, shooting downward at a speed exceeding several times the speed of sound. Binghua maintained the micro-wormhole Han sword ejection for a minute, blasting the ground more than 100 meters below to pieces before withdrawing the micro-wormhole. A total of 650 Han swords were projected, and there are still 1,350 in stock. Binghua calculated silently in her heart, and was ready to open the micro-wormhole at any time. Below, as Binghua stopped projecting Han swords, the raised dust and smoke gradually dissipated, revealing the pitted ground that had dropped several meters and the Han swords stuck in the ground. The dozen or so Cyclops who originally guarded Sargeras were now pinned to the ground with countless Han swords pierced through their bodies and lifeless. Suddenly the soil trembled, and a figure suddenly crawled out of the soil, breathing heavily. This was none other than Sargeras. As the only half-beast warrior of the third-generation super warrior level, Sargeras relied on his body's defense to withstand the projection of the Han sword. Apart from feeling the discomfort of being hit in the chest and a little skin trauma, he had no other serious problems. Sure enough, the weapons of the Fekong series alone cannot cause much damage to third-generation warriors. Binghua thought silently in his heart that Medeo's figure was like a god in the sky, which made Sargeras feel chilled. Then he heard a burst of sound in the air. Sargeras felt something was wrapped around his neck, and then his eyes suddenly rose and start tilting. Binghua looked at the ferocious head of Sargeras flying up, and Qi Yuan swung it hard again in his hand, directly hitting the huge head with one eye. The next moment, the red and white flying scene was extremely bloody. Now, even if the Cyclops civilization picked up Sargeras' head, there would be no way to reattach it to a body. It was completely cold. The sudden death of Sargeras had a huge impact on the Cyclops civilization. Morale, which was not very high in the first place, was directly reduced to the lowest level. Then, under the air superiority of the Angel Legion, they supported for a period of time before being defeated directly. And because the Cyclops King was killed by Binghua, the defeat finally turned into a rout. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 117. The dense warships in the sky exploded and fell. In the face of Skyblade's firepower and defense, their counterattack was so feeble. The celestial battleship on the side of the Cyclops caused some trouble for the Skyblade battleship. One of its main guns penetrated the small shield condensed by the Skyblade's real-time calculation and damaged a small area on the Skyblade battleship. Then the Cyclops' celestial battleship stopped firing. Under the command of Angel Ran, the two Skyblade battleships withstood the siege of the surrounding ordinary battleships and fired their main guns at the same time to fight back. It can be said that the celestial battleship on the side of the Cyclops was unlucky. The main gun hit the energy furnace, causing it to be paralyzed on the planet. After killing the Cyclops Queen, Binghua rushed into the Cyclops army again and slashed with the Red Abyss sword. In the Cyclops army, where even second-generation warriors are rare, Hyoka is undoubtedly invincible. After a mass killing, Binghua and the female angel warriors of the Heavenly Sword Legion joined together and defeated the Cyclops Legion. Binghua took the lead, and the Chiwen sword in his hand was invincible, easily cutting through the bodies of the Cyclops soldiers. This battle lasted for several hours, and the ecological environment of the plains of Polistar suffered a devastating blow. The originally lush grassy plain was now filled with huge potholes and countless corpses. Under the corpses, there were rivers of blood that converged into dark red streams. In the end, only a few battleships and soldiers of the Cyclops civilization escaped from the Paras system, according to incomplete statistics after the event. In this battle, a total of more than 500,000 Cyclops civilization was wiped out, and more than half of them were ordinary Cyclops who could not even be called the first-generation super soldiers. Most of these Cyclops are the pilots and captains of battleships. Some angel warriors broke into the Cyclops' battleship and discovered that almost all the people in the battleship were ordinary life forms that had not undergone super genetic modification. As for the reason for the above conclusion, it is because they are too weak. The Cyclops in the battleship, which is nearly 3 meters tall, cannot even withstand a sword from the soldiers of the Sky Sword Legion. At the same time, after the war ended, Binghua discovered that there was no prisoner of war, which surprised Binghua. Finally, after asking Angel Ran, I found out that angels, half-animal civilization and animal civilization have always been mortal enemies of each other. In addition, advanced civilizations have no need for slaves. The main reason is that the aesthetics of the two sides are different. It is useless to keep them. If there is demand, they may keep a few prisoners of war to reverse the supergenetic technology of the enemy civilization. The remaining those who do this will be directly executed. Therefore, when a war breaks out between the physical life civilization headed by angels and the animal and half-animal civilization, it will usually turn into a brutal war of annihilation in the end. Binghua returned to the Skyblade battleship and took off her armor. After contacting Angel Ran to teach her the rest, she went to tinker with her own affairs. The Han sword, which mainly added a small amount of red gold, was gradually unable to keep up with her fighting rhythm. Binghua was in urgent need of a batch of stronger weapons. It just so happened that this time they defeated the Cyclops civilization and seized a small batch of materials for flame-level weapons. Binghua planned to take this opportunity to replenish his arsenal with high-end weapons. A huge explosion appeared in the starry sky, like a brilliant fireworks in full bloom. A celestial battleship, covered in black smoke and countless firelights and nearly 20 kilometers wide, was slowly falling into the atmosphere of a planet. More than 20 celestial warships and countless medieval warships were entangled with each other, mixed with densely packed angel warriors. In this cruel battlefield, countless male angels died every moment, but the commanders of both sides were so jealous that no one wanted to retreat. Huaya sat on his throne, frowning, his hands on the armrests of the throne clenched into fists, his eyes filled with faint bloodshot eyes. Dust Star, I will hand over the command of the Imperial Guard to you. Are you capable of breaking through their defenses? King, my subordinates will definitely be able to break through the defense line. We will live up to the king's trust. Chen Xing raised his right hand and put it on his chest and bowed slightly, with a confident look on his face hidden by his bangs. Well, I'm waiting for your good news. Huaya waved his hand and pretended to trust Chen Xing, but he was secretly distressed in his heart. The Imperial Guard could be said to be the real elite of the Angel Legion. It was also Huaye's and Laozi's reliance on Huake to suppress the foreign kings, but some of them had already been lost in order to surround and kill the four kings last time. Huaye felt extremely distressed at the thought of using his own Imperial Guards to charge into the enemy formation this time. However, because Wang Lianjun's side had a strength advantage, if the Tiangong group did not have elites to open up the situation, they would end up in the end. The end of being slowly eaten away. This is what Huaya has seen during this period of time, when he frequently fought with the foreign troops of the Wang Alliance. Now Suri, Sumari, Chen Tian, Xingyo and other generals have gone to fight on the front lines. Huaya could only entrust the command of the Imperial Guard to Chen Xing and let him break the current tug of war. As for Huaya himself, he was overshadowed last time by the combination of Tianye King Haglas and Tianlai King Huaxiang. Throughout the battle, Huaya was kicked like a ball by Hercules, and then Huaxiang, who was more handsome than him, was blasted with stellar energy driving technology. Even if Huaya had a weapon that could easily cut through the divine body, it had no effect at all. Because Huaya's combat experience was too poor, and her glass and Huaxiang were already on guard, Huaya couldn't touch them at all. In the end, several generals under his command came to rescue Huaya, but Huaya did not get any benefits. After this battle, Huaya, who was swollen in heart, was brought back to his original shape, and he understood that he was not the material for fighting, and he could just settle down and be the Angel King, so this tug of war began. Angel Ran piloted a Skyblade battleship and led a 150,000 Angel Legion to encircle and suppress the remnants of the Cyclops scattered on the border of the Mir galaxy. Binghua also drove slowly towards the Mir star system on his flagship, occasionally stopping to collect some rare resources on the way. When passing by a star system that day, Tianren suddenly detected the signal of a small group of Cyclops civilization. Binghua, who was thinking about what to use to replace the flaming sword as a standing weapon, heard the news and wanted to go out for a walk for the first time in a long time. So Binghua led the 51st level guard angels, rushed out of the Skyblade battleship, and dived towards a yellow planet. Binghua and the 50 guarding angels behind him holding flaming swords moved faster and faster in the universe, and soon reached the outside of the planet's atmosphere, and then fell down without any hesitation. A terrifying friction force acted on Binghua, and at the same time, the extremely high temperature formed a ring of fire that enveloped Binghua's entire body. After the update, it will be changed to noon, and I will go to bed at night. Thank you everyone for your tips. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 118. The thousands of degrees of high temperature caused by atmospheric friction made Binghua feel nothing but a little discomfort. Among Angel's supergenetic technology, only the first generation of super soldiers cannot break into the atmosphere without injury. Because only after being promoted to a second generation super soldier, the Angel's body will undergo qualitative changes, and his flesh and blood will be as tough as metal. The high temperature generated by the friction when such a tough body breaks through the atmosphere will only make the second generation angel feel hot all over, which is still within the range that men can bear for the time being. The white clouds in the sky were pierced by flaming meteors. None of the Cyclops who were releasing their desire to kill on the earth paid attention to the vision in the sky. Kill me hard. Then replenish resources and let's leave this galaxy. A Cyclops holding a battle axe roared loudly, surrounded by burning fire and billowing black smoke. This is a prosperous city-state that is still in the Cold War age. The grand houses built with sandy yellow bricks are as fragile as paper under the powerful power of the 3-meter-tall Cyclops. Cyclops soldiers armed with heavy firearms fired wildly in all directions, beating the flaxen-haired residents running around the streets to pieces. Maybe it's because the humans on this planet have similar shapes to angels, which reminds the Cyclops of the fear of being chased by angels. They no longer have the idea of replenishing resources, but kill simply for catharsis. It's as if the humans in front of them who can only run away and are unable to resist are regarded as angels, and they can freely release the fear of angels in their hearts. You devils! The gods will punish you. A man with short flaxen hair and a metal helmet jumped from a roof and stabbed down with a steel sword. A Cyclops holding a gun didn't check for a moment, and was stabbed into the neck by a steel sword. The pain caused it to scream loudly and shake its body. Go, get out of here and run to a safe place. As soon as he said this, the man holding the sword was thrown away and landed on the ground. Due to the difference in strength and weapon, his sword just barely pierced the Cyclops' cuticle skin. The Cyclops turned around and raised his gun, with a cruel look on his face as he wanted to kill the dwarf who had hurt him just now. But no one was seen, and suddenly there was a crisp sound at his feet, and the Cyclops lowered his head to look. The man holding the sword was crouching beside it, staring blankly at the steel sword with a gap in his hand. Then he felt a dangerous aura coming from it and quickly rolled to the side. The next moment there was a muffled sound, and a footprint sunk deeply into the ground appeared on the ground, with dense cracks surrounding it. After the man stood up, he slashed the exposed part of the Cyclops with his sword with his backhand, but it only caused a very shallow wound. What kind of monster is this? The man was a little desperate. As a famous warrior in the city, he couldn't even cause effective damage to these demons. At this moment, a figure carrying a battle axe and much stronger than the gun-wielding Cyclops appeared from the other corner of the street. You can't even kill a native. Are you too embarrassed of our Cyclops clan? Facing the question from the super soldier captain, the gun-wielding Cyclops answered with a trembling voice. Captain, I will definitely kill him, just give me some time. The sword-wielding man caught in the middle was sweating profusely. He couldn't defeat any of them, but a stronger one came. Could it be that the gods had abandoned the city? The man closed his eyes in despair due to the huge gap in strength, comforting himself in his heart that at least he had just saved several women and children, and his death was not worthless. Just as the man closed his eyes and prepared to face his death, a harsh sonic boom came from the sky above his head, rumbling and suppressing all the cries and screams around him. Then an ethereal and melodious female voice came. Human, you are safe. The man opened his brown eyes and stared blankly at the existence suspended in mid-air in front of him and the demon-like Cyclops corpse at her feet. She wore a bunch of helmets with red tassels on the top, and the visor was pulled down to cover her eyes and part of her cheeks, but the remaining half of her face and her blonde hair hanging on her chest, which was as bright as gold, were so dazzling. Coupled with the white wings exuding a divine aura on his back and the exquisite armor that perfectly displayed his figure, the man felt like he had seen the goddess at this moment. A few seconds ago, Binghua was suspended in mid-air, frowning at the tragic situation below. Team 1, Team 2, split up and try your best to rescue those civilians, and the rest will join me to destroy those Cyclops. The 50 guardian angels who followed Binghua to break through the atmosphere answered loudly yes and then dispersed. After Binghua finished assigning tasks, his body began to descend, and he just happened to see several civilians being chased by a grinning Cyclops holding a battle axe. Binghua reached out and activated the micro-wormhole transporting technology, pulled out a long sword with a silver blade that was slightly reddish, and then threw it away. The Cyclops was grinning and playing a game of cat and mouse when it heard a harsh scream coming from behind, followed by a sharp pain in its chest. It looked down and saw a silver sword tip coming out of its chest. With the sound of the Cyclops falling to the ground, the several women and men who were being chased naturally saw white wings spread out in the sky, a cloak floating up and down behind a suit of gorgeous armor, and the ice that kept moving in a throwing posture. Magnificent! God has come to save us. Thank you to the great God for punishing the devil. Binghua frowned a little and looked down at the man and woman whom she had rescued, who were kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. She didn't like this kind of kneeling ceremony very much. There's an angel over there. An angel is coming. How many have come? Report to the captain that there are only 3 angels. Fear spreads among the Cyclops, but there are some brave ones who want to rely on the angel's head as a symbol of their bravery. Why are you panicking? It's just 3 angels. What are you afraid of? There are more than a dozen of us, come with me to kill her. Just when Binghua had a headache and was trying to explain to the indigenous people who worshipped her as a god, the sound of heavy footsteps came from the corner of the street. Binghua quickly landed in front of the prostrating crowd and stared at the dozen Cyclops soldiers pouring out from the street corner. It's a great help. As a thank you, I will give you death. After saying these words, the corners of Binghua's mouth rose slightly, and 5 or 6 long swords around him ejected from the micro holes. There were just a few pops, and among the dozen or so Cyclops that rushed over, several of them were pierced by long swords on the spot and flew backwards. There was even a long sword that penetrated 2 Cyclops soldiers in a straight line, and the bombardment made a big crater on the ground. Half of the dozen or so Cyclops soldiers who had originally charged were wiped out in an instant. How could they fight? The captain, who was lucky enough not to be standing on the shooting track of the longsword, quickly shouted in panic. Retreat quickly, the enemy is the Angel King, run quickly. Hurrah! The remaining Cyclops turned around and ran away when they saw that it was a tough fight, wishing that their race's talent had 2 extra legs. Because some readers responded that the name Han-Ji-un was too embarrassing, so I will use longsword instead in the future. As for the appearance of Han-Ji-un, because I can't post pictures, everyone can only go to Baidu. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifen Si Wang. Chapter 119. Binghua's mouth twitched slightly when he saw this. Wasn't he howling and rushing very enthusiastically just now? Why did they run away in an instant, but Binghua was not ready to let them go? I can't tell what it feels like, maybe it's just the displeasure of watching a Cyclops slaughtering being similar to myself. After all, in this world, appearance is justice, right? The longsword was reloaded on the catapult at the other end of the wormhole, and in the next moment more longswords were ejected from the micro-wormhole than before. The air was torn apart and screamed. Bah! With the sound, the Cyclops who turned around and fled the next moment were shot into sieves by a dozen longswords flying forward. Then starting from them, the street ground more than 10 meters in front was shattered, and dense cracks extended to several stone houses collapsed in the surrounding area. The indigenous civilians who were originally frightened and wanted to run away because of the large number of Cyclops appearing behind Binghua had only one idea. The gods, worthy of being gods, were so powerful that they defeated those gray-skinned one-eyed demons in an instant, which made them kneel down and worship even more energetically, while constantly muttering words of prayer for the gods' protection. Ugh! It's so troublesome. Binghua, who had no experience in dealing with this kind of situation, felt a headache. Of course, an inexplicable sense of vanity arose in her heart. She now missed the days when Angel Ran was by her side. All these troubles could be thrown to her. The one-eyed black demon descends from the sky, destroys cities, kills people, and slaughters animals, but the demon is invulnerable and cannot be defeated. When everything falls into despair, there is a god descending from the sky, with divine wings on his back. He has a majestic appearance, holding divine armor and a sword of fire to kill demons and save the world. Report to the Legion commander that all Cyclops on this planet have been wiped out. Okay, thank you for your hard work. Binghua nodded, then looked at the civilians who had gathered, not knowing what to do. Just when Binghua was about to lead his guardian angels to leave. However, the indigenous residents rescued by Binghua during this period were saved and held a sacrificial ceremony full of ancient customs. Binghua and her guardian angels were the gods being sacrificed, but no one cared about the gods originally worshipped by the civilization. The surviving people shared the stored food and wine for everyone to drink. Although the city became dilapidated under the attack of the Cyclops, Binghua could see that there was no despair on the faces of the people here. Then for some unknown reason, a grand fighting ceremony was held after the celebration. From Binghua's perspective, each of the warriors participating in the fighting was very strong and good-looking. Of course, they were comparable to the men. Angels are far worse than that. Among them were several warriors whom Binghua had seen when he was rescuing the residents of the city. They relied on their flesh and blood to fight against those ordinary Cyclops soldiers. Although those gun-wielding Cyclops were not the first generation of super soldiers, those few warriors still left an impression on Binghua. But it was obvious that neither Binghua nor the guardian angels she brought were too interested in this ancient duel method. Although their fighting skills in duels are better than those of ordinary angel warriors, they are not to the point where the guardian angels should be surprised. Because the angel's combat method is fully three-dimensional, sometimes it cannot be compensated by simple skills. This also involves spatial sensing and some calculation predictions. In the end, of course, when Binghua led the guardian angels to leave, the human king of this prosperous city-state still looked regretful. In the past few days, Binghua had already seen the plan of this human king. It was estimated that the last duel was to attract the attention of the angels, gain the favor of the guardian angels, and leave one or two demigod bloodlines or something. But the king made a wrong calculation. After all, the female angel beside Binghua had lived under the rule of the god-making civilization since she was a child. She couldn't usually see it, but she had the arrogance of a higher civilization in her heart. Unless there were special circumstances, Binghua could not think of any female angel who would be willing to marry a man on this planet. Binghua was sitting on the throne of Tianren. Since it was not wartime, the guarding angels below gathered in twos and threes and whispered, talking about some of their experiences. Only the high platform where Binghua was sitting did not have any female angels staying here, because the classes within the Heavenly Sword Legion had been vaguely divided. Binghua, who is revered and is the leader of the Legion, naturally has the highest status, followed by Angel Ran and Angel Lan, two powerful angels who accompany Binghua. Then there are the guardian angels represented by the guardian angel group, and then there are the ordinary angel combat teams. Although no one divides them, these three classes generally do not intersect. Ordinary angel team soldiers will not chat with the guardian angels during their breaks. Guardian angels will not take the initiative to chat with ordinary angel warriors, unless there are special circumstances, such as blood connections, or they were good sisters before joining the Heavenly Sword Legion. Binghua was powerless to change this phenomenon. This was an unspoken rule that every angel warrior in the Heavenly Sword Legion abided by default. Fortunately, Binghua had designed a complete promotion system when he rebuilt the Heavenly Sword Legion, but there was no need to worry about someone secretly causing trouble. Until now, the Tianjian Legion's warehouse has accumulated enough resources for hundreds of angel warriors to be promoted to second-generation warriors. However, for the sake of fairness, Binghua did not take them out directly, but used them as resources for the battle against Mir Star. Rewards for brave female angels. Just when Binghua was thinking about the futility of all this, Kesha suddenly sent a secret communication request. Binghua agreed and a projection appeared. Kesha, why did you contact me suddenly? We haven't been in touch for a while. I've heard a lot of rumors about you recently. Your Heavenly Sword Legion seems to be developing very well. In the projection, Kesha's long golden slightly curly hair is spread over her shoulders. On her beautiful face with a slight smile, there is a circle of light blue eyeshadow at the corner of her eyes. In Binghua's impression of Kesha, her face naturally exudes a gentle, loving, and approachable big sister temperament. But now that Kesha has a faint blue eyeshadow at the corners of her eyes, Binghua feels that Kesha's temperament has changed dramatically, becoming domineering and aggressive. It was like an innocent girl who, after not seeing her for a while, transformed into a monarch with the power of life and death in the world, but what remained the same was Kesha's tone and voice. Kesha, you are joking. Now I guess Huaya has listed your Skyblade Legion as the #1 enemy and is on guard. Binghua shook his head and spoke with a bit of envy. Being alerted by others meant that the Skyblade Legion was powerful, otherwise no one would take it seriously. Okay, we sisters should stop bragging about each other here. I'm contacting you this time to have something serious to discuss. Binghua, have you obtained any information about the battle between Huaya and the expatriate Wang alliance? Binghua secretly wondered if you were the one who started the attack, but she still looked serious. During this period, she was busy attacking the Mir Galaxy, the territory of the original War King. She had not paid attention to the battlefield of Huaya and the foreign king for some time. Did something unexpected happen? Super Seminary Angel Binghua. Author, Shifeng Si Wang. Chapter 120. In the projection, the smile on Kesha's face faded and turned serious. Kesha pondered for a moment and then spoke slowly. The foreign king's coalition forces suffered a huge defeat just a few days ago. The coalition forces were split in half by the imperial guards under Huayet. If this continues, it will be a matter of time before the coalition forces are defeated. Binghua couldn't help but frown after hearing this. She understood the meaning of Kesha's words. You mean, you don't want the coalition to be defeated so quickly? Kesha nodded approvingly. As expected, you are different from He 11 and Liang Bing. You knew what I meant as soon as I opened my mouth. Binghua shook her head slightly and responded to Kesha's faint smile. It's nothing, it's just a fact on the surface. After Huaye solves the coalition forces, he will naturally focus on our female angel. Yes, you are right. Huaye has been wary of me for a long time. If we hadn't provoked a conflict between the expatriate king and him, we would have had no choice but to leave Angel Nebula. Binghua nodded in agreement, and then asked curiously, then Kesha, do you have any ideas to delay the defeat of the coalition forces? Well, I already have an idea in my mind. I just came to ask what you mean. Binghua, are you willing to listen to my orders and help me? Although Kesha's face was calm, there was a trace of undetectable anxiety in her eyes. She was worried that Binghua would reject her request. Among the current 4 leaders of the female angel corps, Liang Bing is her biological sister, He 11 is her good sister since childhood, and Binghua is the one with whom she has the least relationship. Kesha knows very well that the female angel group, currently ranked the weakest in the angel nebula, cannot advance and retreat together. Especially the Heavenly Sword Legion, which ranks second in military strength among the female angel groups. If Binghua disagrees with her plan and continues to stay in the Mir Galaxy to quietly develop her Heavenly Sword Legion, then Kesha will be very passive, because not only was the lack of the most important high-end combat capability, it also reduced her bargaining chip with the expatriate Wang Alliance. Although Binghua is not a human being, she is vaguely aware of Kesha's worries. After such a long battle, the Heavenly Sword Legion has been crippled from a strength of 10,000 to 20,000 people to a huge army with a total of more than 300,000 people. Naturally, she is not people who cannot see the situation clearly. Kesha, just tell me what you need me to do. We are all fighting for the future of the female angel, aren't we? Kesha felt warm in her heart. She didn't expect Binghua to answer like this. At the same time, she was also happy that Hexi could make such a good sister. Then I'm welcome. I have already obtained the consent of Liang Bing and He 11. Our 4 legion commanders declared themselves kings at the same time. Only with equal status will those arrogant angel kings cooperate with us. Then, each of us led the main force of our legions to converge in the Hera star system, and together they attacked Huaye's rear and the foreign Wan coalition forces to form a 2-sided pincer attack. After hearing Kesha's plan, Binghua felt that it was very feasible. After all, Huaye is the common enemy of everyone now. There is no direct conflict of interest between the expatriate king and the female angel for the time being, but Binghua still has a question. Kesha, your plan is very feasible, but I have a question. According to the information I have received, Huaye has 4 warriors with first-generation divine bodies under his command. How should we deal with this? Kesha pursed her lips and smiled confidently. We don't need to worry about this, we are not the main force attacking Huaye. The rising sun and his ilk will naturally be entangled, we just need to disperse Huaye's small number of troops. Binghua nodded, hoping everything would go as smoothly as Kesha said. Okay, I will complete the reorganization of the Sky Sword Legion as soon as possible and rush to the Hera star system. After hanging up the communication with Kesha, Binghua took a look at the information on the formation of the Heavenly Blade Legion and some of the new rules for becoming king that Kesha had transmitted. Then Binghua began to worry about the matter of becoming king. Not a small thing. With the strength of the Heavenly Sword Legion and the recruits still in training, it can indeed support the power of the Angel King, but it is not above or below the level of the Angel King. Convey my order, inform Angel Ran to stop the mission of destroying the Cyclops, and immediately drive the Skyblade back to the cross system to stand by. A guarding angel below who was relatively close to Binghua nodded and quickly turned around and walked out of the hall. Because Binghua suddenly issued an order, the guardian angels who had been chatting together in the hall immediately stopped chatting and stood in neat columns on the left and right below, waiting for dispatch. Binghua stood up from the throne and took a few steps forward. He looked around at the upright guarding angels standing below, and then he spoke loudly. "Okay, sisters. The leisure time is over. Our Heavenly Sword Legion has another big battle to fight next. Now adjust your mentality and we will return to the Heavenly Sword base as soon as possible." The Tianren flagship, which originally maintained a high-speed regular voyage in the universe, suddenly began an ultra-long-distance space jump, and soon reached the space node located on the outer edge of the Kra galaxy through the space wormhole. After completing the data confirmation with the Heavenly Sword Legion headquarters hidden in the inner area of the asteroid, the Heavenly Blade battleship jumped directly to the space node outside the Heavenly Sword base under the guidance of the headquarters. Then Skyblade began to sail towards the giant port of Tianjian base. At this moment, two brand new Skyblade flagships were already parked in the port. Binghua walked along the wide corridor in the base, surrounded by several angels who were responsible for managing the Tianjian base during this period. They followed Binghua while reporting on the recent situation. "Legion Commander, during the time you left, the manufacturing department has completed the construction of the remaining two Skyblade warships in the plan. Well, you accomplished your mission very well." After receiving Binghua's approval, the two female angels following behind all looked happy. "Okay, you go down first. Remember to attend the Legion meeting tomorrow." "It's the Legion Commander." The two female angels nodded, separated from Binghua at the next fork in the road, and continued to complete their work. After Binghua came back, he followed Kesha's request and deliberately began to spread the news that he was going to be king among his angels. Surprisingly, no one objected. It was only later that Binghua realized that he was the commander of the Heavenly Sword Legion, and becoming king was just a different title. Only those who objected were ghosts. Angel Ran, who was on the periphery to suppress the remnants of the Cyclops, and Angel Lan, who was guarding the third planet in the Mir star system, also returned to the Heavenly Sword base on their respective Heavenly Blades a few hours after Binghua. The two of them and the warriors who had just stepped down from the Sky Blade received a notice that their Legion commander would hold a Legion meeting tomorrow and declare himself king at the meeting. To be honest, Angel Ran and Angel Lan were shocked by the news and couldn't understand why the Legion commander suddenly wanted to become king. However, Ran and Lan could only keep their questions in their hearts, and could only wait for the opportunity to ask the Legion commander in person.